Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. We're so excited to welcome you here. We want to first thank you all for joining us on this panel on uplifting first generation of student of color voices on Oxy's campus. This panel is part of a series of webinars designed to help you learn more about the Occidental community. Each week we feature a different aspect of student life on campus. So last week we actually kicked off the series by inviting 4 recent alums to join us to talk a little bit more about how their time at Oxy influenced their professional pursuits. If you weren't able to catch that live, or if you'd like to view upcoming sessions, please head to our webpage, and one of our colleagues is gonna link this in the chat below, or look for a preview Occidental live virtual series on our website. And I know that there are a few people kind of coming in now, not a worry. You'll be able to kind of view this completely in its entirety, both on our website, and we'll likely also send you a recording. And so we want to acknowledge that navigating the college process is an extremely stressful journey in and of itself. And certainly having to do that during a pandemic, during racial reckoning, during natural disasters is only going to add to the anxiety and stress. We want to remind you that there's no right way to go through the college search process, and you're going to be totally okay. I know even if it doesn't feel like it right now, you are certainly going to be enrolled at a college next year at this time. Simply by being here, you are investing in your future, and hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a better sense of what you're looking for in a college for your next kind of part of your academic journey. Before we get started, I did want to say that our students are only going to be speaking from their own experiences. Of course, this isn't meant to be representative of the entire student body at Occidental, because our students are not coming from a monolithic group. The first 45 minutes will be a conversation facilitated by me. We've reserved the remaining 15 minutes to take questions from the audience. If you have questions for our panelists at any time, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature. I have some colleagues backstage with me, who will be able to answer questions that you ask, or able to float up questions to me so that I can ask the panelists. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves as well. So my name is Michelle. I'm one of the Senior Assistant Deans of Admission here at Oxy. I use the She series, and I'm going to ask Gabi to start us off and say your name, pronouns, hometown, major, minors, and in any clubs, orgs, research, things like that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabi Gonzalez. I'm a first-generation student from New York City. I'm from Queens. I study sociology at Oxy, and I minor in linguistics. This fall, I am also interning at Snapchat, and I am heavily involved in the dance community at Oxy. Also, I studied abroad in the spring, which I'm happy to talk about at any point.
Awesome, thanks. Jordan?
Hey everyone, I'm Jordan. I am a senior economics major from New York City. I do a lot of things on campus, typically when we are actually on campus, but I've been involved in the Blythe Fund, which is our student managed investment portfolio. I've been on student government, and I've done development economics research with my professor over the summer. And then, like Gabi, I also studied abroad, but in Malaysia.
Great. Alexis?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Alexis Martinez. I use the He series. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm majoring in economics with potential minors in geology and urban and environmental policy. And I'm involved in the Latinx Student Union, Geo Club, First Gen Club, Women of Economics, and the Economic Students Alliance.
Thanks. Ashley?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley. I'm a Diplomacy and World Affairs major and Latino Latin American Studies minor. I'm also from New York City, Queens. I am also involved in a lot, so Latinx Student Union, as well as Alexis. Student Labor Alliance. I'm working for the admissions office. I've worked for the Neighborhood Partnership Program, did an internship with the Representation Project because of the class, and right now I'm doing my internship through the Oxy at the UN program. And I also studied abroad, and I went to Amsterdam. So.
I think I mentioned earlier that it's hard to define an Oxy student, but I think words that I would often use are over-involved and over-programmed, and certainly that's going to be true for our 4 students here. Last week at the Young Alums panel, you likely noticed that most of the alums were from California originally. And ironically, this week, most of our current students are from New York. And I just want to remind you all that students are coming to Oxy from more places than just California and New York. We represent 48 different states in addition to DC and Guam, and 12% of our students went to high school outside of the US. But to get us started with our first question, and I'm going to start with kind of the same order that we did our intros. So maybe Gabi can go first. Maybe Gabi disappeared. So I will start with Jordan. When you're applying to colleges, and this is something that we'll ask everyone to answer, when you're applying to colleges, what led you to Occidental? Why did you ultimately end up choosing to apply and attend? And we'll go ahead and start with Jordan.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think usually whenever I answer this question, I also offer some advice here. Initially, I found Occidental because my friends were applying, and that was the thing to do in high school. You apply to where your friends are going. So don't do that. But really, I was looking for something in economics or I think business initially was what I really wanted to do. But I think during my college search, I was able to look at some majors more intently. And I found out that all the things that I'm interested in all have one common characteristic, which is that it's sort of determined by economics or economists to help make decisions that can solve some of the issues that I care about. And I realized that after, getting some of acceptances to these schools and looking at my options, that an economics education would serve me a lot better than a business education. And after visiting Oxy, I had really a tremendous opportunity to just see some of that coursework in action and fell in love.
Absolutely. We'll ask you to expand on a few of those points later on. Alexis, do you mind? Hello, welcome back, Gabi. I know that as we enter this Zoom world that we are reliant on technology, but Alexis, do you mind kind of taking on that question?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually very grateful to have great programs at my high school. My college counselor was in partnership with the College Match program here in Los Angeles. I don't know if anyone has heard of it. They have a lot of great programs in other cities and other high schools as well. I definitely was gravitating towards liberal arts by their recommendation. And one of the main reasons that the liberal arts is better than some of the more bigger state schools or even bigger private universities is because of the idea of what a liberal arts student is someone who engages critically, who is well-rounded, and is able to communicate effectively regardless of the means of communication, whether it's spoken, online, emails, whatever the situation is. They're very well trained in all these skills that translate effectively to any profession and any job. And that's really what they wanted me to do. And that's what I think was best for myself. So Occidental was one of the greatest schools that I saw. I actually never heard of it until I visited and did a workshop here at Occidental. And I'm like, wow, this is a really great campus. And as I looked into the alum, the programs, I fell in love with all of the programs available and some of the great accomplishments some of the alums have done in the past few years.
Great, Ashley. So as a reminder, it's when you're applying to colleges, what led you to Oxy? Why did you ultimately end up applying and attending?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm from New York City, and I really wanted to go for some reason to Southern California. I thought everything was next to the beach. And so I was really gravitating towards looking at schools there. And so Oxy came on my radar, and I started looking at the academics. So I focused a lot on the diplomacy and world affairs major and department, and also sociology, critical theory, and social justice. And they all spoke to me a lot. The classes that were offered were in my realm of interest. And I knew because obviously it's a liberal arts school, I'd be able to explore. And under the diplomacy and world affairs program is the Kahani Oxy at the UN program, which also spoke to me. I really wanted to apply even before getting into Oxy. And I know that it's the only undergraduate program that offers that type of opportunity. So that was really special and unique. And I also visited through the multicultural visiting program. Oxy flew me out, and I got to spend a couple of days just on campus as a student, seeing what life was like. And I thought everybody was really, really kind. The campus was really pretty. There was actually a campus with green space on it. And so it's sort of the culmination of all of that that really made me say, yeah, that's where I'm going.
Thanks. Gabi?
Yeah, I was also knew that I really wanted a liberal arts education. I wanted somewhere where I could sort of lean into becoming, this is cheesy, but like sort of lean into becoming like a T-shaped person, like someone with like breadth in a lot of different areas, but like the opportunity to become an expert at one thing that I'm really interested in. And I thought Oxford would be a really great place for that. I also like came from sort of a small high school where I had like close relationships with my professors, and I learned that like by being closely connected to them, like I received really great like opportunities for recommendations, and just like it improves the quality of my education. And I knew that by going somewhere where like the professors would want to know my name, would notice if I was gone, like they would just like cultivate a sense of community and a sense of like investment in me as a person and as a student. And I've definitely found that. I've had professors call me into the office hours because they have like a book recommendation, or because they like you know, have an idea that they heard me say that they want to talk about. And I was also looking for a city, and my interest in liberal arts and like a metropolitan area really narrowed down my choices, because as many of you who are interested in liberal arts know, like liberal arts colleges in the US tend to be in like smaller towns, or just like in sometimes isolated areas. And so as a New Yorker, I was like, I really need to be somewhere where I can get food from all over the world, and like where I can get around, where I can like have fun, go to museums, go to like see a movie or go see a play, where like things are happening all around me. And I've definitely found that at Oxy, it sort of just like hit all my checks.
Thanks. I'm going to kind of skip around on the list of questions that I have, because I think Gabi spoke, kind of touched upon the support that she received with professors. I wonder if the rest of you can talk a little bit more about the support that maybe you found on campus. It could be a professor, it could be a staff member, clubs, organizations, or maybe just your peers. And maybe if we could start with Ashley with that.
I would echo the support that Gabi talked about with professors, but I want to speak more to my peers. I really appreciate the community that you built at Oxy, just like from day one. And because it is a smaller school, you know, you're sort of in the same environment with everybody. Everybody's going through the same things. And everybody also has different, like diverse ideas and like backgrounds and like quirky things to bring. So it's never like a dull day. But I found that just my friends have been really supportive, whether it's like through classwork or extracurriculars, or, you know, just daily stress, whatever it is. I think community is really special at Oxy.
Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Occidental community is really unique in that, and I hate to use this word, it's a very collegial atmosphere where I think folks aren't necessarily in competition with one another, but I think always seeking to lend a hand first. I think that's really amazing and something that is unique in higher education, but definitely on the professor side, on the faculty side, the perks of being at a small liberal arts college really shine through there. It was my economics professor who proposed that I be her research assistant, because that was something that I hadn't even considered. It didn't even cross my mind that was something that I could do. And I think it's really amazing that our professors are the ones who engage us in their insane academic research that other institutions really are only reserved for either the top students or the professors with the biggest grants, etc. The professors and the faculty here are just amazing.
Yeah, Alexis, can we turn to you?
Yeah, definitely to echo Jordan's point about professors, they're definitely helpful. I mean, just office hours alone, you go to some bigger schools, you never get that one-on-one time with the professors. You're always consistently dealing with TAs who may not even want to be there either, because they are only fulfilling their own credits and their own need for graduation. So having that direct one-on-one conversation with your professors is definitely enlightening, enriching, and definitely can be something fun. I know sometimes with my professors, I go to their office hours and we talk extensively about topics, and we like email each other all these podcasts and research papers or YouTube videos we find amazing or influential, and you can have those kinds of conversations as if they were almost your friends. Not always, right? Because there always has to be that level of respect between a professor and a student, but they definitely do help you. And also your friends, right? Meeting people who are just like you, who have similar interests, who won't necessarily sabotage your goals for short-term pleasures, right? Your friends ask you like, hey, let's go to this party, let's go watch this movie, let's go catch this dinner. You say, no, I have to study. They won't make you feel ashamed. They'll definitely encourage you. Be like, you know what, go ahead and take those 3 hours to study because we don't want you falling behind, because we don't want to fall behind. So the support system, professors, friends, always going to be there for you.
Absolutely. And going back to Alexis, as a native Angelino, what was the transition like when you're staying in Los Angeles for college? What was that like?
That's a great question. I went to high school in downtown Los Angeles, and I only mention that because it's not too far even away from Eagle Rock and Occidental College. And I am very privileged enough to say that I have a mode of transportation, a car, to get around the city even more easily than some who might take the metro, the bus, the trains. So it definitely was an easy transition. I never got homesick like a lot of my friends from high school who went to even the East Coast to study. I never felt that, and I'm grateful for that, because I know sometimes that can hinder your ability to do well in class and stay focused. For me, it was even easier because because all of my friends went to schools outside of the state and even far away from Los Angeles. That actually kind of forced me to make friends on campus, which is actually a great thing. You don't want to just maintain the same friend group, especially in a new and different environment when you could definitely meet new and exciting people. So it was definitely easier for me, more so than others.
Absolutely. Gabi, you mentioned you're from New York City. Home is not Los Angeles. What was that like, kind of adjusting to a totally new region?
I think the transportation was the thing that I needed to get used to right off the bat. Los Angeles just was a sprawling city, and I didn't really understand how big and how different it would feel. I was used to sort of getting on a metro and walking anywhere I needed for miles and miles and miles, and then coming home at night and like getting off the train. And I realized quickly, like, I could be walking forever in LA. Like, you just don't really want to do that. It's fun to walk around once you're in sort of like the neighborhood you want to be in, but I just feel like it takes more planning to be in LA and to say like, I want to go to this restaurant and this neighborhood and this pizza shop. And it was sort of exciting for me to just say, hey, like, I'm gonna just like look at new things to do and plan ahead and say like, these things are within like 5 minutes of each other, so maybe I can just like rent a zip car on campus and try these 2 things out that are nearby, and I can like take a bike share and bike around the area for free and check out, like, buy myself ramen. So I've just like found new innovative ways to get around. I've taken advantage of the like bike share program and Bengal bus, and it's been really fun getting around that way. I think it's very different if you're not used to driving where you need to go, but it's pretty fun. People are always surprised when they're like, oh my God, you have a license? I'm like, yes, you sort of need one to get around LA, and I'm pretty lucky that I have that resource. I can like borrow a friend's car if I want to, or use Zipcar to get around. But once I got over that, getting around has been really fun.
Absolutely. Certainly, we've kind of mentioned Los Angeles. We've also mentioned food a few times. Jordan, I'm going to turn this over to you. How have you engaged with LA? It might be kind of your favorite restaurants that you want to kind of give a shout out to in this session.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, unlike Gabby, I don't have my license, which is definitely a true New York thing. And I'm a very avid fan of LA Metro. It might take a little while, but it gets you there. But I think Occidental is in such a really fun neighborhood in Los Angeles. It's in Highland Park, Eagle Rock, right on the border there. It's like a working class, traditionally Latinx and Asian neighborhood. And we absolutely benefit from that in terms of food. Um, we have a number of really great restaurants nearby, like Delia's, which is our local burrito spot, breakfast burrito spot for $5 with your Oxy ID. Very popular. I'm sure everyone here can attest to that. My personal favorite is Joy, right there on York Boulevard, a few blocks away from campus. It's Taiwanese food. If you head to their Instagram, you'll see a lot of really interesting people who go there, including like Chrissy Teigen one day. But I think the coolest thing about Oxy is that we're right, I guess, to the west of somewhere called the San Gabriel Valley, which has like some of the best, I'm going to say Asian food because it really spans so many different cultures, but best Asian food I've ever had. And I often spend a lot of time exploring a bunch of those restaurants there. But my favorite, I'd say, is Sam Wu, really great duck. But
Jordan, you were speaking my love language. I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. It doesn't get the reputation that I believe it deserves. So I'm so thrilled that we are bringing it to this audience. Ashley, do you mind talking a little bit about Los Angeles, about your kind of interactions with the city?
yeah, absolutely. I think LA is such a strange place just because it's so massive. It really is difficult to assign one characteristic to it. I think Ashley mentioned it earlier. You traditionally think of beaches and Hollywood, but it's really so much more than that. And I think as a first year, just through our classes and some of the programs that are offered through student life offices on campus, you really get to explore so many different parts of LA, such as Black LA. LA has a tremendous Black population in the South Central area. Crenshaw Boulevard really is the home to that in terms of arts and culture and food, Inglewood. But then you have, as I mentioned, the San Gabriel Valley, which has a very significant Asian population. And then there's East LA with a very strong Latinx population and what comes with that. And I think in some of the more centralized parts of LA, such as downtown and I'm thinking of some places in the valley, you really get to see all of those cultures mix, and it makes a really fun and unique experience, especially for a college student and especially for someone who has not really experienced that before. And I think there's something to be said about living in a very diverse city where obviously I'm from New York, I'm used to that, but I think LA has its own brand. And I think the sprawl has something to do with it, and seeing how that develops. It's been a really interesting experience so far for me.
Awesome. Ashley, do you mind taking on that question as well?
Yeah, I want to agree with what Gabby said about the fact that LA is really huge and you could just be walking for ages before getting to maybe where you want to get to. But with that, I'm also very used to like using public transportation to get around or walking. And I started, bit by bit walking through LA instead of like using a car, because it's very easy to get into that routine since everything is so far away. But I really appreciate like the colors and the liveliness, like the little details that you see when you're walking. There's a lot of art near like the Oxy area if you just walk around, and I think there are even tours that happen, although I've never actually been on them. So I really appreciate that. And also when you do get to like the central places that you want to get to, like whether it's like downtown LA or like the beach area, it's just, there's so much to do. There's so much food and you have like a million options. And there's also live music all the time. I think that this is because there's really good weather and everybody's just like really chill. Like that's a very LA vibe. It's very like slow and relaxed. So there's also music. It's just really, really fun.
Absolutely. Alexis, what are some of the places that you're taking your friends to if they're not from LA?
That's actually a great question. I'm from South Central Los Angeles. I always tell everyone that I'm about 10 minutes away from USC. So if anyone who knows where USC is or has looked into the area, that's pretty much where I am from. I'm closer to downtown. farther away from some of the places that Jordan mentioned, like Crenshaw, Watts, Compton. They're definitely adjacent to my neighborhood. And I definitely do explore those areas simply because that is my neighborhood as well. But some of the places that I take my friends are, like, as everyone has mentioned, the San Gabriel Valley, downtown Los Angeles, Echo Park, Silver Lake. I feel a little bit more attached to those areas because that's where I spent most of my high school years. I did cross country in high school and I ran the LA Marathon. So I definitely encompass all of LA. I've seen all the neighborhoods, and I've been exploring as much of LA with them than I did with myself. Oftentimes they don't know where to go and I don't know either. And I suggest something and they kind of trust me because they're like, oh, he's the local, so he should know. But I secretly don't. And it's an adventure for everyone. It's kind of fun. But yeah, I definitely don't bring them here with me, not because it's a bad area, but there's always the language barrier. A lot of people here in my area are predominantly Hispanic, and they speak Spanish and not a lot of English. So it's not always a great fit to put people in that situation and make them feel comfortable. So I try to stay to places that they would be a little bit more comfortable with.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Ashley, can we start with you for this question? Can you talk a little bit about your transition from high school to Oxy? What were some of your concerns heading into colleges, and how did those concerns play out over time?
That's such a hard question because it's like you have to think back on what you worried about back then. I don't know. I think this is also something I've noticed in all the interviews I've been doing, that everybody is really excited to making friends. So maybe like one of my concerns is like making a bunch of friends and everything. I'm trying to think, but the way I adjusted to that, I'll speak, that's easier. I participated in the MSI program, the Multicultural Summer Institute. And so that really helped me transition. That's also why I think I'm having trouble trying to think of like my worries, because that time sort of settled any worries that I might have had. But it's pretty much when a bunch of students, like 30 or something students, go on campus for the summer and take a couple of classes and get credit for it. And also they like introduce you to the Los Angeles area and to like different resources on campus. So you get like the little bit of exposure before fully like being thrown into the college like experience. And I made a lot of my friends there, and I got to meet some faculty early on. So I think that that's what helped me transition, and what probably like made sure I didn't have any fears and made it easy on like official day one.
Sure, absolutely. Gabi?
Yeah, I think I'm also sort of trying to flash back, but I remember, yeah, I guess wanting to make friends, and just wanting to be successful. Like I think one thing that I worried about was like I wanted to be surrounded by like-minded people, like people who really wanted to make a difference, or we're just having like important conversations about like current events and like social issues. And I felt like my high school like wasn't doing as good of a job. And I think I really wanted to be a part of a community that like didn't put the burden of those things on students. And I feel like Oxy students are definitely very proactive and very engaged and involved, but I feel like we share that responsibility with the administration a little bit more than was the case at my high school, which I realized I totally trailed off the idea of like wanting to make friends. But the way I sort of went about meeting people and getting to know like who are the people who will have these important conversations with me, and who are the people who like I can sort of be myself around, where I don't have to like, am I treading on eggshells right now because I want to talk about this topic? I think one of the first experiences where I felt comfortable and I was like, wow, like these people actually care about the world. Like they care about like making Oxy like a positive experience for everyone, no matter like where you come from, like was my Oxy Engage experience. Oxy Engage is sort of an experience you can, where a few students, like before you come to campus for the first time, you can choose out of a number of experiences, but I chose camping. There were also like, there was like a surfing themed one, and there was like a walk around LA, like the music culture theater, something like that. But I chose camping, not because I like camping. I'm like totally not a camping person, but that was the point. I was like, I want to be uncomfortable. I want to like have an experience that is more about the people and not necessarily about like walking around the city that I'm already going to spend 4 years in. So I was like, let me like put myself in a situation, get to know people who are different than I am, and see how they like respond. And I think that was a positive experience for me because it's before orientation. So by the time I was doing orientation, I already had familiar faces. I knew like who went on the camping trip with me. Like I had already started talking to people, and I had like friends that I could be like, hey, let's go grab like a meal together. So that was sort of the buffer for me.
Absolutely. I'm realizing I knew this, but it's just clicking right now that all 4 of you are seniors. So kind of thinking back to like your concerns is probably really hard. So I'm going to twist the question a little bit. So for Jordan and Alexis, and we'll start maybe with Alexis first, how would you recommend to yourself when you were in high school, your senior year, how would you recommend that you like maximize your time? Like what advice would you want to give yourself when you were applying for colleges?
Did you say when we are applying to college or transitioning to college? Sorry, applying to college. Yeah. I felt I did everything right. Not to inflate my own ego here, but I felt like I did everything right. And one of the biggest issues that I saw with my friends who went, again, I don't mean to talk bad about state schools, but these are just issues that are so systemic that I think are unavoidable and should definitely be addressed. And the alternatives are liberal arts, private colleges. Is the financing. I think I did that very great by having great counselors, again, a great support system in high school who taught me that the sticker price is relative, and Occidental is very generous and has given me so much help through scholarships and work study and very low interest loans that have made it affordable. And it's definitely something that is counterintuitive because there's a high sticker price compared to some of these state schools, yet somehow at the end of the 4 years, I am better off financially. And in fact, I didn't have to maybe take a year off because of financial concerns. But I think another tip I would give to myself is to apply to more schools. I didn't apply to that many schools because, again, I thought I was hot stuff and I was like, yeah, I'll get in for sure. And then I didn't. So I definitely applied to more schools. And that doesn't mean don't choose Oxy. That just means that if you love Oxy as much as I do, then someone else does. And unfortunately, you're going to have to just kind of wait and see if you're the right fit for them, even if you think they're the right fit for you.
Yeah. Jordan?
Yeah, I think that looking back at when I was applying for schools, and I think I mentioned this earlier, the biggest piece of advice for myself, or from myself to everyone listening right now, is don't apply to where your friends are applying. But I think generally what I mean by that is don't sweat the small stuff. There's a lot of small stuff that I considered when I was looking for colleges. What are my friends applying? What are the dorms like? What do you do on a Saturday night? Like anyone, that answer changes every single Saturday night. And I think oftentimes, especially for folks who may not necessarily have a lot of experience or great guidance in applying for schools, the small stuff becomes the only stuff that you think about because that's what you know. For anyone that I speak to when I talk about Oxy, I try to figure out what they're interested in and how Oxy, or really any school that they're interested in, can best serve them. And I think for folks who are looking for someone to spend the next 4 years of their life, you really should take time to understand what you want out of that experience and what the school that you're applying to can give to you. There's so much to worry about, but I think at the end of the day, no matter where you go, you're going to make friends. You're going to have hopefully a relatively nice room to stay in. It might not be luxurious, but it will be nice enough to live in. the rest will work itself out. So just find out what you need and what best will support you for the next 4 years.
Absolutely. Kind of speaking of support, we've spoken a significant amount about professors and kind of mentorships that you all have found. Kind of thinking specifically about mentors of color, either upperclassmen, faculty, staff, you can go ahead and just raise your hand if you want to answer this question. This was someone in the audience asked this question. How was that kind of finding a mentor? Were you successful in finding a mentor of color, either upperclassmen, faculty, or staff? What did that kind of entire process look like? So you can go ahead and raise your hand if you want to answer.
I can start off if anyone doesn't want to, but I think certainly for Black students on campus, Oxy is not necessarily the campus with the most Black faculty. I will be very honest with you, but the school has and is taking many steps to sort of mitigate that, whether that be through actually hiring more Black faculty or through improving Black representation amongst our support staff, for example, in Emmons Wellness Center, where there are free and unlimited therapy sessions for students. But I think there's also a number of student-led initiatives that also make it really a great place to be. I think last year, specifically for Black students, Harambe for Black men and for male identifying people, I should say, and for female identifying people, there is Black Women Thrive. Those are 2 student affinity groups that are sort of overseen by the Dean of Students' office, but it's really just student-led initiatives to support folks who identify in the same way. And that really can take on whatever activities you wanted to. For example, we went to go see Black Panther together. We went to go see Queen and Slim together. And I think at the end of the day, at least having those communities is really important for me. And I found Harambe to be a really excellent space for that, because there really is no structure to it. You just know that there is this group of people that you can be comfortable with and go to whenever you need, and not feel like you need to go to some figure of authority. You can just go to one of your peers. And I really have enjoyed that.
Thanks. I know that there are a few questions specifically about affinity groups and about kind of intersectional affinity groups. Do any of you have experience with affinity groups and kind of want to talk about that, intersecting identities kind of within different groups as well? Alexis?
Yeah, maybe Ashley could build off of this as well. I'm part of Latinx Student Union. I'm on the e-board. I'm currently one of 2 co-presidents. And that's definitely an affinity group that is very recent. And I think that it definitely tackles a lot of issues that a lot of people may consider in terms of identity. And these are ongoing conversations that we're always discussing, whether it's in a formal or informal setting, always having speakers, events, culture events, Semana de la Raza, where we bring in a lot of artists, not only from the US, but from South America and Central America, to come here and showcase their art, be supportive, eat some great food, and be able to just discuss what does it mean to be a Latino, Latinx, Latina, what are these identities that we have assumed, and how can we always work towards better representation even within our own groups, and how to deal with those issues. It's definitely a new club. It was a combination of previous efforts. So if you want to think about affinity groups, there's always a lot. And the Latinx Student Union just sought to optimize by consolidating the groups. You know, why are we scattering ourselves across campus when we could just all be in the same room at the same time, having the most productive conversations at any given moment?
Yeah, go for it.
I think also, like, I was on the e-board for Latinx Student Union like last year or 2 years ago, whatever. But I want to, talk about LSU. I think that there's a really strong Latinx community on campus. But like Alexis said, like, it's really spread out. I think LSU has like 250 to 300 students, something around that. So it's also hard to sort of get everybody in a room, you know, because it is such a big community. But when you think about it in terms of like the greater, 2,000 whatever students that there are, you know, it's still like a minority group. So it's really important to make sure you find your spaces and like your people that you can relate to on campus. And I think that LSU has been really special in being able to like create those spaces for Latinx students and for other people to just like enjoy the culture. I know one thing that I've always really appreciated has been, and this is just something that LSU has taken part in, but it's like a Greater Oxy event. It's like a food event. I don't remember what it's called, but pretty much everybody every affinity group, I think, brings like food to share like with the Greater Oxy community. And that's so much fun because you get free food. But also because it's like, you know, a really important part of like your culture. And I also wanted to speak on one more thing, just saying the professors that are affiliated with the Latinx Student Union, I think really try to support and engage in the best way they can. I've found that sometimes they care even more than the students like on the e-board, because they know, you know, they've had the same background and they know what the struggles can be, and they really try to validate any issues that maybe you might yourself be struggling to validate, but are very real. So yeah.
And I just wanted to add one thing about just affinity groups in general. And I saw that there was a question asked about this, but I think after having been at Oxy for 4 years, I've seen many iterations of affinity groups and how it's changed. And I think it really speaks to how Oxy students will learn something and then do better. And something really interesting about our affinity groups is that though we have so many based on whatever identity that it represents, we work together, and it's very rare that there's an event put on by one single affinity group, because I'm thinking of our night market, which is really one of the greatest events I think on campus. You have affinity groups, you have like, I think almost every single affinity group on campus coming together to put on this really amazing event. And it goes beyond events. We work together. When we see a problem on campus, we come together to figure out how we can solve it collectively. And then I think on the other hand, I saw a question about queer groups and intersectional identities within that. I think we've certainly come a long way from my first year here, where I think there were so many different groups on campus for queer identifying students, and they combined it into something called SAGA, Sexuality and Gender Acceptance Club, I guess. And it's sort of to cherish that everyone is so vastly different, even if we have one common identity. And I think that this really speaks to how Oxy students see what issues may exist on campus and then take steps to mitigate that as soon as they can.
Thanks. Another question from a viewer. We kind of have spoken about advocacy. What does that look like for our students, particularly for issues that are happening on our campus? And again, this is a question that can be answered by anyone. So the exact question, I think, is how does Occidental deal with homophobia, racism, and other injustices? How responsive is administration when it comes to racial issues on campus? In all honesty, do the POC students feel heard? So go ahead and you can just go ahead and start talking if you feel like you want to take that on.
I can jump in here based on just my experience working on student government. I've spent 2 out of the past 3 years on student government at Oxy, and I think that our diversity and equity board really is central to challenging the school's administration and really anybody on any issues of injustice or marginalization of any particular group on campus. Oxy students are loud, and they make sure that when they see a problem that it will be addressed. So I'd certainly say students of color are heard on campus, and we won't let the administration forget it if there is something that we see awry. But I think it's also important to note that activism in general is always an uphill battle. And I think this is the case for a school like Occidental or a large state school or anything else. It's an uphill battle. There is not a be all end all. It's also a constant battle, and it takes an aware student body to keep the folks in power on their toes.
I think, and maybe this is another way of kind of getting to this, the heart of this question as well. Of course, like Oxy is not a perfect place. There's a lot of things that we can improve on. There are a lot of things that are areas that you know, if we can wave a magic wand and kind of help speed up the process, that we would change. Can you all speak to some of the things that you would want to see kind of transformed kind of during your time at Oxy, obviously like after your time at Oxy as well? What are the areas that you would like to see improved? I'm gonna pick on someone unless someone wants to go. I'm gonna start with Ashley.
Yeah, I would want to see more transparency. And I think that this, even if there was more transparency this year, next year I would say the same thing because it's, you know, an ongoing thing. And I think I'd say that also, like transparency in terms of funding, because I think that as was mentioned earlier, like Oxy, there's a lot of money. Oxy has a lot of money. Oxy puts a lot of money into like financial aid, but where everything else goes, like I would want to know more of. Because I feel like there are some departments that are underfunded. And that's not necessarily because there's not, you know, full interest in them. But I want to know the reasons of like why they're underfunded. Like if the Black Studies department or the Latino Latin American Studies, I don't even know if it's fully a department, I should know that, is underfunded. Like I want to know why, because I would want, that's, you know, like a resource for students of color to be able to take that and then go ahead and like advocate and say, well, this is why you need funding and this is why we should like allocate more money like in whatever direction. So yes, I'd say transparency.
Thanks. Alexis, I've seen you nod your head a few times, so I'm gonna go to you next.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the biggest improvements are funding to departments. Oftentimes departments are left without critical resources, whether it's to hire students for on-campus jobs, right? I was a grader for various economics professors, and unfortunately, due to some unforeseen financial circumstances, such as Los Angeles raising the minimum wage, right? They had to encourage students to, in a way, grade faster, be more productive, which is always a little pressuring on students, especially when it's your on-campus job and it's your only on-campus job. You don't want to lose that. It's very important to you. It's part of your financial aid. So that's definitely through the lens of student employment. Yeah, funding for departments to be able to hire students to participate in research in any way, any capacity they can with professors as well.
Gabi?
One thing, I'll say two things. Now that we're on the topic of financial aid, I realize I have one thing that I would like to see improved in this area, and that is the relationship between like financial aid advisors and students. I was very fortunate, and I know this is not like the experience of many, but I went to a private high school and I was on financial aid, and I just had such a different experience with that office. And I know that's not like very typical, and I was in a very privileged position, but I just feel like Oxy could do better. Like in high school, I was sort of able to walk into financial aid and say like, I need this textbook, like it's way too expensive. Like I want to be successful in this course, and they would order it for me and I would have it like the next week or something like that. And I'm not even asking for that much. Like I'm just wondering how financial aid can sort of improve their relationship with students and be a little more proactive, especially if you're a first-gen student. Because one thing that is very clear to me is that had I not had my like prep school, high school experience, I would not know to reach out for resources. I would not know that like this school has a lot of money, like I can tap into these things, but like you need to be taught to seek those things out. And it's hard to know like what you don't know. And so I think it's critical that there be some improvement in the way that, I don't know, maybe financial aid or another department on campus sort of facilitates communication. I've spoken to Oxy students very recently as part of like a first gen coalition who said, I had no idea that I had a financial aid advisor. And I was like, how is this possible? So that's one thing. But another like less urgent thing that is just sort of petty is that I sort of came into college like very excited about like cross-cultural experience and potentially studying abroad, which I did get to do, and I was very excited about it. But I sort of had this like fantasy in my head of studying abroad for the whole year. And I learned that financial aid only carries over for one semester, versus like stories from peers at other schools who say like my financial aid carried over for the whole year. So that's just something to be aware of. And you still have the opportunity to study abroad like for a semester, and that's wonderful, and financial aid carries with you. But I wish someone had said like there's a caveat to that. But I also wish that if the International Programs Office or someone else had said like, here are your alternatives. Like maybe we can't offer you this financial aid, but here are these scholarships, or this is how you take like a semester off, and sort of go about like finding an alternative way so that you can still be abroad for the year and like be financially secure. So that's just another thing I wish was different. Very passionate about those things. All right.
Thank you for sharing. Jordan?
Hi. Yeah, I think if there were anything that I would improve about Oxy, it would probably be something related to, I think, and this is more specific to the economics major, something that, or offering more classes that I think relate more specifically to Los Angeles, being that we are in the city of Los Angeles. I think certainly for the other majors, there are so many amazing connections to the city, such as in the geology major where we do tons of field trips, really across the majors. But I think economics, and being so theory based, sometimes you get caught up in the literal classroom, and you don't really get to explore how it connects to our actual community until very late in the major. So I guess doing better on that alone would be my only criticism.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing. We are rapidly running out of time, and I know that there are a few questions that we're not going to be able to get to. But one of my final questions that I want to ask you all are may or may not be, I don't think any of you are on campus. So that means you are spending kind of the fall of your senior year away from kind of the physical space that's been your home for the last 3 or so years. What do you miss most about campus? What are you excited to kind of, hopefully once we are allowed to have nice things again, like what do you kind of want to surround yourself by again? And we'll start with Alexis.
Yeah, definitely one of the things I miss the most is the classroom and my friends. The classroom, because you can have that live in-person conversation. You know, something went wrong on the board, some numbers off, you could just shout like, wait, everybody, like this is wrong. Or just be able to, in real time, more so than you can through Zoom, be able to ask questions, stop the class, have a conversation, have a discussion, which sometimes isn't very well replicated in Zoom because of your technology limitations or whatever the case may be in some situations. And definitely your friends, you know, being able to have those spontaneous Friday nights where you do something crazy and you have fun and you're just able to go to the library together and study and like eat pizza at 1 a.m. or something. Those are some of the small little details that I miss the most and that I hope would be there for my senior year.
Sure, absolutely. Gabi?
I have to say the food like in the surrounding area is something that I miss so much. My mouth waters when I think about like the boba that I used to get from T&Me, but like they're so big. It's just like a giant, it's like $4 something like dollars for like a really good sized boba. Like the boba's fresh, it's warm, it tastes like honey, and like even in New York, I haven't been able to find a good boba place. Like my other New Yorkers have like recs, please send them my way, but it just like seems like a hard thing to replicate. And like the taco trucks, I'm gonna make you all hungry, so I'm gonna stop. But like my mouth is watering. I miss the food so much.
Absolutely. Jordan?
Yeah, I second that. The food in LA is really great, but I think what I miss more about campus specifically is the Friday lunch meals in our dining hall in the marketplace. Every Friday at lunchtime, you walk into some crazy new meal. It's always different on Fridays. And I'm sad that my last fall semester was not on campus because I missed the best meal of them all, Winterfest and Thanksgiving feast. So really sad about that. Probably won't have that for a very long time, but if I ever get to go back to Oxy during a holiday, I'm definitely going for the food there.
Ashley?
I really miss the campus space, seeing so many people on campus. Like, I just love being around people, and I really wish we could go back to doing that in a safe way. But yeah, being around my friends, and you know, the brochures that you see when you're applying to colleges with like those kids just like laughing on the grass and like, I don't know, sipping tea or whatever, like that actually is Oxy. Like, you'll find people like playing with a frisbee or whatever. And it might be super stereotypical, but it's true. And it honestly makes you feel good, even if you're just having a bad day and you like can't participate. It's just like a nice environment to experience. And also on food, this is also weird because I've heard that a lot of people don't like college food, but Oxy has like pretty decent college food, especially the ones that like rotate, as Jordan mentioned. But I miss the food in the cooler, not necessarily because of the food itself, though it's good, like the mac and cheese bites, but also because, especially on the weekends, there's always people there until it closes at like 1 or 2 in the morning. So yeah, that's really nice. The people.
Absolutely. We hopefully will be able to have a nice meal with people at a table once very soon. But it's very clear from our session that you will not go hungry during your time in Los Angeles or on campus. And with that, I think we are just about out of time. Next week's session, if you wanted to learn more about affinity groups or kind of cultural orgs, next week's preview Oxy session is actually on clubs and organizations. So I'm going to encourage that you sign up for next Thursday session if you want to learn more about that. Student government, things like that, go ahead and register. We're also going to drop in the link in the chat, links to do interviews, to kind of learn more about information sessions held by admission officers, as well as student sessions, which are just kind of students leading around kind of prospective students as well. So a few different ways to stay engaged and learn a little bit more about the college. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you also to our panelists for taking this time out on this Thursday night, particularly those who are in a different time zone than us. I know that it's a little bit late, so please take care of yourself, everyone who's listening. It is an incredibly stressful year, an incredibly stressful kind of time to be alive in this world. And so if you need any help, if there's anything that we can do to help, please make sure that you're asking your admission officer. Please make sure you're advocating for yourself through this process, because certainly you have many people in your corner, many more people than I think you expect. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of close out. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you again, panelists. Goodbye, everyone.